like to invite you to come back next week. It's the evening before Thanksgiving. But Brooke Hodge, the architecture and design curator at MoCA, the Museum of Contemporary Art in Los Angeles, will be here to talk about her recent book and corresponding exhibition titled Skin and Bones, Parallel Practices in Fashion and Architecture. The lecture is co-sponsored by Fashion Design, so I invite you all to come back next Tuesday as well. Our lecturers tonight are Lea Ciavarra and Anne-Marie Lubrano. Lea Ciavarra received her Master of Architecture degree from Syracuse University in 1995, so I'd like to welcome her back to her alma mater. While here, she received the James Britton Memorial Thesis Prize, and she was also the recipient of a Graham Foundation grant, which was for a student-organized symposium. She's also a LEED accredited professional, and she's taught at numerous schools, including New York Institute of Technology, Parsons School of Design, New Jersey Institute of Technology, and here at SU, where she also served for 1 year as the director of the pre-architecture program in Florence. She was the recipient of the Dean's Distinguished Alumni Award in 2005, and she has been an advisory board member here for the past 5 years. Anne-Marie Lubrano received her Master of Architecture degree from Harvard's Graduate School of Design in 1996, where she was nominated for the James Kelly Templeton Thesis Prize. She has taught also at Harvard, at the Boston Architectural Center, and the Interior Design Department at Parsons School of Design. The office they opened, Lubrano Ciavarra Design, they founded in New York City in 1999, and they've designed all scales of residential, commercial, and institutional projects. Their work has been published in numerous publications, including Architectural Digest, Interior Design, AM New York, and Time Out New York. And their design work, in general, is a kind of understated, let's say, palette. The palette of materials and colors they use is intentionally understated so that the shape of the space itself can be foregrounded. It invokes what they call emptiness, leaving a space, hopefully, for the everyday activities of life to flavor the space themselves. They're currently working on several projects on the Near Westside here in Syracuse, and this is the topic of their lecture today. Their lecture is titled Renovation/Innovation, a design collaboration on the Near Westside. Please join me in welcoming Lea Ciavarra and Anne-Marie Lubrano.
Is that on? Is it on? Hello? Yes? Yes? Okay. So I'm Anne-Marie. This is Lea. So last winter, when Mark approached us to teach a professional practice class through the process of house renovation, we asked ourselves, besides our experience in running a practice, what can we impart about residential design? What do we bring to the collaborative process? So we took this as an opportunity to review the last 10 years. Though residential work has not been our only focus, we have worked steadily on a range of residential projects. On luxury ground-up retreats, on funky starter flats, on elegant live-work apartments, on traditional additions in upstate New York, on contemporary juxtapositions, on austere penthouses, on family townhouse renovations, and on green condo developments. So we looked at this range of our residential work to help us articulate a methodology that we felt could be translated to any house at any budget. This methodology, we found, comes down to one word: clarity. Within this idea of clarity, we have three key architectural elements: a clear plan, a clear coded palette, and a clear relationship to context. So about a year ago, the local non-for-profit home headquarters offered 3 of its properties to the School of Architecture for students to study as the subject matter for the class Renovation Innovation. Despite being only a 3-credit course, we actually conceived of the class as a studio, one that would function as a satellite office of our Brooklyn-based firm. Okay, so throughout the lecture, you'll see these blue slides which parallel the structure of a book we hope to publish in the coming months, and the book features the work that we did with students in this class. This structure is based on a typical architectural process. So the Pro-Prac class was actually that: professional practice in practice. Okay, so here we have the invitation, what we call the program. For each of the abandoned houses in the Near Westside we were working on, we were asked to design a single-family home within a construction budget of $150,000. We were also told that in addition to this budget, there was the possibility of additional funding for any green features we might include. So in and of itself, the budget, which was fairly limited, was a motivation to focus on a sustainable approach for this class. In addition, we were asked to achieve LEED certification, gold certification for each property, and to complete the drawings in time to start construction in the fall of '08, which, for those of you not familiar with architectural practice, is quite a fast-track deadline. So with these requirements in mind, we knew we would need a strong team working with us to help realize these goals. And as Leah will explain, we got lucky.
Okay. So the first step of any design process is, or at least it should be, assembling a good team. The structure of the Renovation Innovation course was inherently collaborative, though. The dean brought us to Syracuse to both teach the course and to provide full architectural services for the renovation of the 3 existing houses on the Near Westside. In turn, Anne Marie and I invited specialists from local firms and institutions to provide technical assistance and insight into developing literacy in ecological and sustainable building systems, or in other words, to complement our strengths in architecture and design. Most importantly, the students were also able to receive direct exposure and feedback from a client, home headquarters in our case, throughout the semester. So in terms of collaboration, in one sense, the neighborhood itself is a collaborator. Most of you by now are probably familiar with the Near West Side. This neighborhood plays a vital role in the city of Syracuse's past as one of its earliest residential neighborhoods. In the first part of the 20th century, home to a diverse community fueling the city's industrial boom, the neighborhood served the adjacent urban core with a vibrant mix of housing, business, and light industry. By the middle of the century, however, a steady decline in manufacturing jobs and a wave of migration away from city life resulted in a shrinking population and a growing shortage of neighborhood investment. Today, after decades of decline, the Near West Side is sadly one of the nation's most economically depressed neighborhoods. Plagued by vacancy and decay, compelling evidence of economic hardship lies in the remnants of a vibrant architectural past. Community groups like Home Headquarters and the Near West Side Initiative are joining residents to both preserve and revitalize the existing building fabric to attract artists and innovators to the area. Okay, so there's the neighborhood, and then there's the client. Under the focused leadership of Executive Director Carrie Quaglia, our client, Home Headquarters, is committed to creating housing opportunities in upstate New York. Home Headquarters is leading the Syracuse Neighborhood Initiative program through the acquisition and rehabilitation of vacant properties in the Near West Side, among other urban neighborhoods. Home Headquarters staff members, and you see here Andrea, Kim, and Jessica, provided us with endless support, resources, positive feedback, and general good humor throughout the renovation innovation process. Actively participating in all design reviews, like this one, They subverted the typical owner-architect relationship to become true collaborators. Also from home headquarters, at least up until last spring or this summer, there was the always encouraging Doug Riker, rehabilitation manager, who's now replaced by Mike Hughes, who's out in the audience, and also Rob Platnick, not pictured, but a super helpful field superintendent. There's the always accommodating Alice Mann, principal planner at home headquarters, and Paul Driscoll, the neighborhood planning director, who is not only supportive, but also always fun to have around. So we had the neighborhood, the client, and next our very generous sponsors. The foresight of Dean Robbins to bring together a multidisciplinary team to work as a sounding board for the students' design innovations gave us the opportunity to challenge the previous conception of a pro-prac elective. As you all know, the Dean's continuing efforts and energy to realize these projects will certainly reshape the future of downtown Syracuse. So we know he's not here tonight, but we thank you, Mark. And then there's always upbeat Ed. Throughout the semester last fall, Ed Bogus, executive director of the Syracuse Center of Excellence, was often heard saying, "This is my favorite class. I love this class." In addition to generous financial support, Ed and Anna Fernandez both, who's an environmental scientist at the COE, each played an active role in generating inspired ideas for the projects that were grounded in technical insight, as well as firsthand knowledge acquired through Anna's interactions with community members. And Marilyn Higgins, with a mission to combine the power of art, technology, and innovation with neighborhood values and culture, the Near Westside initiative is clearly a catalyst for creating bridges between new and current residents, as well as between students and local businesses. Near Westside Initiative Board President and Vice President of Community Engagement at the university, Marilyn continues to bring a keen and critical eye to the process as an enthusiastic advocate for the needs of the residents. Next, there are our consultants. And far more than simply consulting, to say that the various players who participated in the Near Westside Renovation Innovation projects donated generously of their time, knowledge, and talents would be a huge understatement. Acting alternately as sounding boards and information sources, these members of our design team specialize in sustainable building, Kevin Stack, who you see here, and his son Josh from Northeast Green Building Consulting. Throughout the semester, we relied heavily on Kevin's expertise, over the last 10 months, in fact, and I'm pretty sure he's probably sorry he ever gave us his number. Kevin introduced us to several people not pictured here. For one, the very down-to-earth and knowledgeable Marguerite Wells of Mother Plants down in Ithaca. Marguerite is co-owner of a nursery that focuses on growing plants expressly for green roofs. We also had the chance to bring in skilled and sensitive mechanical engineer Hugh Henderson of CDH Energy Corp, who provided us with the energy analysis simulation you see here for one of the houses, and who also came down to visit us in our office in Brooklyn over the summer. There were others as well who deserve mention. John Manning of Earth Sensitive Solutions, a local expert in geothermal and alternative energy systems, and also Nick Altieri and Mike Bova, who we convinced to come out of their office downtown at Syracuse's Division of Code Enforcement and to have some conversations with the students in class. And lastly, our own Kevin Lair and also Albert Marichal and Katrina Stahl, who gave willingly of their time and ideas during the course. And then there's us. Talking about collaboration, we can't give this lecture without mentioning our team. Fred Feller, a dedicated project manager from Germany originally, who's committing to building sustainably. Rich Nisa, who's actually an SU alum from the class of 2000 and who braved the cold in January with the students to survey the houses. And Carla Carwas and Nora Meehan, who are talented designers and minds both. Lastly, and most importantly, the students. Eric Barassa, Dan DiDio, Jason Evans, Meep Gieske, Elizabeth Gralton, Jennifer Ha, Diana I didn't practice that one. DiCarlo, Rachel Kenny, Mario Mohan, Ian Nicholson, Paloma Rodriguez, Shannon Sturm, Jamie Tan, Taya Wynn, and Megan Yeshigan. I can't say. Sorry, Megan. These students selected to participate in the Renovation Innovation course through portfolio review ranged from second-year undergrads to fourth-year grad students. Each individual fully embraced our charge to create eco-conscious design innovations executed through an economy of means, the results of which are reflected in their proposals, which Anne-Marie will go through with you in a minute. The level of enthusiasm, participation, and productivity that they brought to their work far exceeded the standard requirements of a 3-credit course. So now I'll turn it back to Anne-Marie, who will take you through some of the students' work, select work.
Okay, so documentation. This is really the start of the architectural process. We divided students into teams at the start of the semester with assignments determined according to their various levels of professional experience. One student from each team was appointed as captain, responsible for coordination of both individuals and tasks as required to complete the first phase of existing conditions documentation. And as Leah mentioned, on a cold day in January, Rich, Leah, and I accompanied the students to the Near Westside for a half day of surveying the 3 properties. Kevin Stack from NGBC and Rob Platnick from Home Headquarters joined as well and helped our teams to assess existing structures, including structural failures, to understand on a case-by-case basis what might be required to get each house thermally enclosed and occupiable. Okay, so the first of the 3 houses we studied that are owned by Home Headquarters here is what we call the Shotgun House at 212 Ontario Street. This view is facing west. This street runs north to south. And this somewhat unique and lucky site orientation of this single-story house on a property with an adjacent open lot to the south here offers exciting opportunities for sun harvesting. The building is a modified New Orleans shotgun type in which the house is typically, you can see here in the plan, it's typically 1 room wide with several rooms deep with an entry on the narrow or gabled end, as you see here. The southern exposure on the long face here creates a possible point of contradiction with the typology's plan that could allow for interesting development. See how the property to the north is so close, whereas to the south we have quite a wide open space to deal with. So to make sure that you understand the process, these drawings and photos are the final product of the survey from the students from 212 Ontario Street. And here you see Taya carefully surveying what was the existing dining room. This house, as you'll soon see, compared to the other 2 properties, is in great shape. And the house itself measures a little over 1,000 square feet. Okay, so the second site was located a few blocks away, 317 Marcellus Street. This north-south orientation of this 2-story, 2-family wood frame house is particularly useful in demonstrating the limitations of typology with respect to siting. So it doesn't really make sense, right, that on the north, this is the north facade here, you have the typical traditional 2-story double covered porch to provide additional shading for oversized street front windows. Essentially, it's, can I get some shade for my shade, right? So it seems like a chilling site solution for a climate like Syracuse. Yet on the other end of the house, here at the south, the southern elevation, which faces the light-filled rear yard, has not a single window. So certainly this site is full of potential for improvement. At over 46 feet long on a narrow lot with minimal side yards, as is typical in the Near Westside, a large bulk of the middle interior is dark and internal feeling. On this, our first day of investigation, our basement team, seen here, headed by Elizabeth Gralton, complete with headgear, because there's no electricity in these houses, discovered that the house had a substantial failure along the eastern foundation wall. So from the beginning, before even touching the inside of the house, we already knew that between the foundation repair, shell restoration, and window replacement, our budget for this house was already spent. And you can see here in these images what a mess the house on the interior proves to be. Okay, so the last property that we looked at as a class is the brick house, which is 206 Oswego Street. This street also runs north-south. At over 3,300 square feet, the massive size of this house poses several challenges relative to the project budget. Remember, the shotgun house is not even 1/3 the size of this property. A unique massing includes 2 rear additions. The first you see here, the second there. And those offer opportunities for careful deconstruction and reuse of materials. This last addition that you see here, CMU with only 1 window, was actually the home to a girls' club for a number of years. So despite limited insulation and no salvageable plumbing or mechanical systems, the house maintains some original interior and exterior wood detailing. There's pretty decent wood stair at the front, as you can see here. Okay, so hopefully between the students' drawings and photographs and my story, you get a sense of what we were up against with these homes as we turned our thoughts towards the design. Once existing documentation was complete, each student was given the task of developing a schematic plan proposal for their assigned property. Requirements of this assignment included, as our VC students now know, a project name, a concise thesis statement, a partie diagram, plan sections, elevations, and models. During the 4 weeks of schematic design, Professors Katrina Stoll, Albert Marichal, and Kevin Lair joined the class to contribute individual lectures that address specific topics such as community outreach and client identification, understanding place and tectonics, and sustainable design and building technologies, respectively. While each student generated their own plan ideas, which you'll see here in a minute, for the given property, each house team ultimately collaborated on a schematic design that they presented to our client home headquarters. The following is a sample of selected student work to illustrate the range of concepts presented. So here we are back at the Shotgun House at 212 Ontario. Each student on the 212 Ontario team explored different approaches to take advantage of the southern exposure of the site that I mentioned earlier. So some captured part of the empty attic space, you can see up here, and created a clear story to passively heat and light the space, while others added a second story.
Just the middle.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah.
The middle scheme.
One idea to cut away part of the existing floor plate to create a double-height living room from the basement to the roof maximized the feeling of space within the existing envelope, an expansive approach through an economy of means. Okay, on to the 2-story wood frame house. Marcellus Street is actually zoned for both commercial and residential uses, so the opportunity for a live, work, or community outreach venture seemed most appropriate for this 2,100 square foot house. Each of the initial designs, everyone agreed, would provide a space accessible directly from both the street and the interior of the home to allow for the possibility of such flexible programs. So I think you can see here, I think in Megan's, she's got hers to the back. Here, there's one to the front. I think there's another one here.
Might have had a bookstore.
Right? Much of the design explorations focused on facade studies responding to site orientation as well as zoning. Here you see Rachel's preliminary facade idea, a rough collage about opening the south-facing facade. That issue I mentioned before. Okay, finally, the projects on the brick house at 206 Oswego Street ranged widely due to the large scale and varied history of the property. Some looked at ways to break down the scale of the house by adding multiple programs. One had a dance studio. Oh, sorry. One had a dance studio. Another was a 2-family home in the middle here. While others looked at ways to break down the scale of the house by, explored methods of reuse of existing material to reform the house, which you see Meeps over here. So by exposing layers of physical history, Dan proposed a method of eroding the structure to create new connections to surrounding neighborhood, seemed appropriate from both a social and sustainable approach. Okay, so that's the end of the schematic design phase for the student work. And the next came innovation. After the schematic design phase was completed, each student was assigned a particular architectural element to develop in a sustainable and innovative way. If during the investigation or schematic design portion of the course, the students were encouraged to be rigorous with respect to context and budget, the innovation design development phase, we pushed the group to be as innovative as possible and to try to break the envelope of conventional systems thought. So after the class, we went through these projects and coded these innovations according to different categories of sustainable design that you see here. We have water harvesting, passive heating and cooling, phase change material, thermal envelope, indoor air quality, and living structures. Our intention is that this cataloging of ideas, which is the largest chapter of the book, might serve as a springboard for further investigations, either for students or other designers. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm only going to show a few of the students' innovations here today, but I think you will get a sense from these few that the way in which we tried to guide the students to push the envelope and actually design elements that embrace sustainable technologies. And ultimately, we feel the way we all need to approach a fully integrated systems design. This first one, Jen came up with a whole new take on lawn furniture. In this inventive approach to landscaping, the topography is manipulated to utilize every inch of the limited rear and side yards. Outdoor rooms are built up and out of the ground, moderating levels of privacy through change in elevation and variation of planted matter. So here you see she literally is carving into the building up and carving out of the yard. Rachel, who was focusing on living surfaces and indoor air quality, as well as water harvesting, designed a serious multitasking partition type called Life Flow. This self-sustaining living wall improves indoor air quality, reuses rainwater, and delivers daylight to the interior of the home. The integration of built-in bookshelves, I think you can see here in the rendering, benches, and lighting into the perforated partition provide access to planting from both sides of the wall. Focusing on the thermal envelope, here an innovative insulating skin utilizes a groundbreaking new moldable eco-material produced locally by RPI graduates. Their product is called Greensolate. Jason's site-cast approach used Greensolate in combination with resin to create a waterproof exterior cladding. His design calls for wide elongated strips applied to the east and west facades, while the north and south facades receive narrow vertical wedges. In vertical remediation, Megan used sustainable landscape elements to re-emphasize the neighborhood fabric by creating a series of screens within the site. These dividers connected the ideas of security and boundary to that of growth and green. She selected plants that help draw toxins out of the property, thereby improving the ground and air quality of the site. Dan's plug-in platform. Here his project rethinks an individual's experience of the exterior environment via an interactive planted ramp and roof garden system. Through the creation of a functional yet aesthetic environment in which herbs and flowers thrive and native birds and butterflies are reintroduced to the neighborhood, residents are able to engage directly with the seasonal landscape. So you see planting is actually elevated up for the user. Okay, Deanna's Breathe Sleeve. This project features an innovative facade technology that provides better indoor air quality during all seasons through a system of gills and hydronic tubes that filter and distribute the air throughout the house. So these gills, these automated gills, become a decorative element wrapping the facade of the house. This next innovation was titled Passive Patterns. When a phase change material absorbs solar heat, it transforms from a pellet into a liquid. When the temperature of the PCM drops below a certain point, the heat is released back into space. By solidifying the material but maintaining its properties, here are two examples of wood and tile, where Elizabeth integrates PCM to passively heat an interior space. and everybody really loved this salty solution. In a dense urban neighborhood such as the Near Westside, MEEP felt the roof must be considered in order to maximize the opportunities of the site. An innovative solar heating system incorporates solar collectors as an energy source and molten salt as the conductor to provide heat systems for the home. In a climate like Syracuse, the salt is key to this system. It can store heat for up to 2 weeks at a time, and unlike water, when it freezes, it contracts so pipes won't burst. And last but not least, Shannon's thoughts for regrowing community through the front porch. She writes that a porch is typically viewed as a transitional space between the exterior and the interior of a building. The proposal for the planted porch reprograms this interstitial space to perform as a place of gathering, of gardening, of water collection, of movement, and of rest in order to promote a healthier community atmosphere in the Near West Side. So imagine if each of us could, on each new project we approach, embrace this mentality of design innovation, simultaneously balancing cost and sustainability with design. Imagine the discoveries and the healthy environment we can build. For Lea and I, this prospect remains truly exciting. As we move forward with each of the house projects, our office tried to integrate at least the spirit of these students-generated innovative ideas into the final designs. And Lea will now present that work.
Okay, so to review, together with the students, we work collaboratively on documentation or site research, investigation or schematic design, and innovation or design development. Then, after school ended for the semester, our firm continued to provide services toward the execution of construction documents or realization, which includes also permitting, bid negotiation, and construction administration. As Anne-Marie mentioned, our goal was to incorporate some key ideas generated by the students during the course within the context of functional and flexible floor plans that we consider so essential for today's non-traditional family type. Over the summer, 3 students from the course, Dan, Didio, Elizabeth, and Megan, were selected for fully paid summer internships in our office down in Brooklyn, sponsored by the School of Architecture. Each student worked together with members of our firm to complete the drawing sets. These interns were given the opportunity to research materials and systems as needed to meet LEED for Homes certification requirements, and they experienced firsthand coordination meetings with material suppliers, manufacturers, and engineers. So here you see our firm's final proposal for the little brown shotgun house on Ontario Street. As our students should know, and Anne-Marie mentioned, naming and diagramming are an important part of our design process. So the 212 Ontario Street house we called Parka House. In part because of this new roof wrapper, well, you see it there too. The new roof wrapper or dormer addition that we proposed. In an effort to capitalize on the cost per square foot of usable space on this project, our office adapted the idea of capturing some of the existing attic to create a new flex space up in the mezzanine. The parka, which you see here, wraps the north wall and the roof dormer pop-up to create a conceptual thick insulating barrier to the north, which is this side. While inside, this tall slot over the stair works as a passive stack to draw air up and out through the house, which would not have any active cooling systems. Here you can see that we modified the layout of the interior as well, entering under a new porch canopy. Here. Entering under a new porch canopy through the long south-facing facade with an open kitchen and living room space at the front, which would interact with the mezzanine up above. The bedrooms were located at the rear, away from the street. This project is currently out to bid. At this time, we've got 1 number in. That's a little higher than we had hoped. And we're pursuing 2 others before making a final decision on who will build it. Okay, our design for the 317 Marcellus Street house brings light and air, and thus life, we hope, to the interior of this tall, deep building. Here in our final rendering, you can see where we've removed the double-height porch that was really a barrier to the street at the north face to create a more welcoming planted entry ramp and single-story green roof porch cover. that would allow more light and fresh air into the second floor bedroom above. New cladding to run both horizontally and vertically is included. Similar to some of the students' proposals, our plan also offers the opportunity for rental income to the homeowner, with flex space here, entered possibly directly from the exterior or from the interior of the house, depending. That could be a small shop, an office, a bookstore, or even an apartment for grandma. The green roof and landscaped entry ramp, an interior living wall that we see here, under a new skylight, and an exterior green screen work together to structure this newly defined program of a single-family live-work home. We titled this project Green Screen because of these layers of landscape elements that we tried to incorporate. This project and the next as well. Oh, sorry. So there, the landscape screens. This project and the next one on Oswego Street, the brick house, will most likely be built directly by Home Headquarters' own in-house construction crew under Mike's direction, starting, we hope, Mike, before the end of the year. So lastly, 206 Oswego Street, or the brick house. Due to its size, as Anne-Marie mentioned, we were committed to keeping the house as a two-family residence with only a very few minor modifications to the exterior, including a more deliberate porch design for both units here at the front, and you can just get a glimpse of the side or rear unit entry. And also a change to some of the exterior finishes through the safe removal of the existing exterior paint to reveal the natural brick, and with the addition of a staggered dimension cladding to the front bay window projection. What we ultimately proposed was a less conventional arrangement for this two-family residence on an atypical front-back layout versus a full floor unit per floor, maximizes systems integration by inserting a single common new vertical core. Where am I? Down the middle. To share the plumbing and mechanical infrastructures. This arrangement allows not only for each duplex unit to get 2 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms, but for each unit to also have their own yard, the front or the back, and their own second-story green roof deck as well. This scheme we called 1 for 2 or 2 for 1, and as I mentioned, will hopefully be renovated by Home Headquarters crew. So while all of this was going on, there was definitely some urgency to also announce the ideas being generated in a more public forum for the community, as a way to generate excitement about some of these ideas that were emerging. So midway through the semester, Home Headquarters, responding positively to the work produced by our office and the Renovation Innovation class, hired our firm to redesign a 4th property in the neighborhood, 223 Marcellus Street, to serve as the new Near Westside Community Information Center. It's at the corner of Marcellus and Niagara. Home Headquarters Director Carrie Quaglia noted, "We hope to transform this vacant building into an information center where neighborhood residents can drop in to find out what is happening with the neighborhood, where homeowners can come to meet with architectural students about designs for their home improvements, and where the Near Westside Initiative Board can hold their meetings. Of paramount importance to collaborators in the venture, such as the Center of Excellence and Northeast Green Building Consulting, was that the center also serve an educational purpose by demonstrating some of the possible sustainable building technologies that current and future homeowners on the Near West Side might then be inclined to use in their own homes." So our firm's design intent for the community center was to create an open, inviting, and highly flexible space that could become a real gathering hub for local residents, what we call the living room. The meeting room here is supported by a warming kitchen, restrooms, a gallery or office, and a storage room. This double height space could alternately be used as a lecture hall, a boardroom, an exhibition space featuring local artists, or a party space for a community dinner. The location of a gallery or studio on the ground floor connected to a 1-bedroom apartment up here on the 2nd floor is intended to house an artist in residence, reinforcing Home Headquarters' intent to make the Near West Side an artist community. Through considerable additional financial support received from the Center of Excellence, the Community Center will demonstrate how sustainable innovations could be incorporated into existing neighborhood homes. Local homeowners will be able to see what a green roof looks like as a large portion of the southwestern facing roof will be planted. To understand simple strategies for rainwater collection. You don't quite see it in this section, but there would be a leader inside the building that would connect to a rainwater pillow in the crawl space of the basement below. To test cost-effective ways to reuse gray water, to touch recycled content materials such as FSC timber, wood frame, which would provide the structure for the double height space, recycled glass ceramic tile, and recycled pressed paper countertops. They will also be able to observe up close one of our favorite parts of the project, an interior living wall, and how it can help to purify air. The living wall would be located under a new curved skylight monitor or light scoop that would also provide passive daylighting to the meeting room. All of these green features and others, including PV panels and a high-performing thermal envelope of SIP panels, will be tracked on an interior monitor or dashboard that will allow visitors to watch in real time the energy consumption of the building and how much savings are obtained in operating costs. So you see here that long southwestern facade with the green roof at the front portion, the PV panels in the back, and also a bifold door here which we're proposing as a multitasking element that could serve as both porch canopy and also security when the info center is closed. So this project is currently in the bid negotiation phase as well, and we and many of the collaborators on all 4 of the projects are still working hard to procure the right contractors for the right price so that the Near Westside might truly celebrate as one of the first LEED neighborhood developments in the country. Thanks very much.
First, thanks very much. As far as this home headquarters center goes, I was wondering if it had built into the design its next phase. If it is indeed as successful as I think we all hope it will be, you know, it will almost put itself out of business in 15 or 20 years and hopefully become something else. I was wondering if that was built into the design.
Definitely. We were hoping that it would either become a community center, potentially a gallery, that it always has the apartment upstairs. So you could actually make the apartment completely separate. And then that gallery space may become the current gallery, which is on the lower area on the right-hand side. If you want to flip back to the plan, maybe. So one thought was it could be a retail space, it could be a restaurant. You could use that gallery space as an office connected to this more commercial space downstairs, and then have a rental or live-work space upstairs. So that's kind of the goal.
Hi.
Hi.
You mentioned that you were getting some pricing in and it was a little higher than you had hoped for. What's your target on a per square foot basis for the renovations?
You know, it varies widely because of the size of the small house, on the residential properties anyway, to the size of some of the larger. You know, $100 a square foot for a LEED sustainable, a truly, you know, LEED Gold project is tight, you know, and renovation work versus ground up work. So that's been a little bit of a sort of surprise, I think.
And in addition, sort of some of the local builders are not as aware or in touch with these kind of sustainable materials and things like that. And so there is a tendency, for example, for the living wall to throw a big number at that, things like that, that they're not used to dealing with.
But even something like just the thermal envelope enclosure of some of these, you know, the details, not the standard, you know, wall section. It's got a few layers, it's got different types of insulation, it's got air spaces for conduit to run through so that you're not compromising at all the R value of the portion of the wall that's providing that. So I think a lot of those things contributed to that. You know, we've got one number on from one contractor on 4 projects. So we're still hopeful that we can find someone that would be interested, or to package them together as a group potentially for one company that might help, because I do think in that kind of volume, a lot of the details are repeated. It could also help bring the total cost down on each individual property.
Can I just ask as a follow-up, is there an idea about, it's a little tougher with the renovation work, but any component construction here to save on labor costs on the site?
We did
Component,
we-
meaning, built off-site and brought to the site.
We had actually done, one of the student projects that wasn't shown here was for the brick house, where we had that vertical core. Somebody really looked at, could we build that core off-site and bring it in? But because it is a renovation, sort of bringing it in, the travel, the booming, all of that, it ended up being more cost prohibitive than it was actually worth.
And then there's a little bit of a debate, because we're still pursuing that idea of some prefabricated element on the info center with the heavy timber frame, which we're looking to possibly use Benson wood out of New Hampshire. And what Benson wood is providing is the entire structure, basically, of the double height space, and also, though, the entire enclosure with the SIP panels for both the meeting room and then the existing sort of rear portion of the house that would remain more or less intact as a 2-story structure, and the roof panels, and the skylight monitor prefab delivered. So effectively, the house could be, after demo, enclosed in a day. But of the budget given by home headquarters, that number comes in at not quite, but almost half of the total project budget. You get a lot for that, and there's certainly some efficiency to it, but it's a struggle to I think it's been a struggle to sort of make the commitment that that's a sort of worth the value for the price.
This is a follow-up to the follow-up. Is there a way to take account for the performance and cost to run this house before and after the renovation that's built into the number? And did you guys model any of that kind of?
We haven't on this property, but actually that might be a useful tool in terms of pushing ahead. The model that Hugh Henderson had done for the little shotgun house was starting to look at that, although we didn't really apply numbers to it in terms of budget numbers. It was more just a performance analysis. But I think that would be a tool, because some of the consultants like Kevin Stack and a few of the others, Ed from the Center of Excellence, are proponents of this, because it's not the conventional way yet, unfortunately, that people are thinking, that seeing the big picture of, oh, actually in 10 years, though, I'll be living here for free, almost, right? So I think if there was a way, and I don't know yet what tool that might be, but if there was a way to do it, I think it would help to kind of get over that hurdle.
I was going to ask almost exactly the same question. Hello? Since this is a renovation, 3 renovations, it's inevitably very specific to each house, and it might have been a challenging aspect of cost cutting. But on the other hand, I was wondering what was specifically addressed about these houses that are grounded in Near Westside, maybe urbanistically, or maybe not just the fact that these are specific projects, but because of the neighborhood, what did you address in the design of it?
Part of it, in the beginning, there were a number of houses that were sort of up for grabs, because home headquarters does own quite a few properties in the neighborhood. So we did have somewhat of a say of which houses we were going to work on, and we did specifically pick 3 separate typologies that are found repeatedly in the neighborhood, so that if they felt they didn't have enough money to cover our costs again and again and again, they could take the designs and then apply them repeatedly to different typologies in the neighborhood. And then as far as urbanistically, we felt that it was critical to create and reinforce the idea of the front porch, which is really a strong element that's found on each of the properties in the neighborhood. And so we tried as much as possible to preserve that. On this house, on the community center, we actually added this piece. If you want to go back to the section diagram, perhaps. Yeah, there you can see that the door that folds up and opens out to create this kind of front porch piece. We don't have a ton of frontage on that because, due to site setbacks, so we tried to add that element. And then finally, something that Lea and I have been working on for a long time, actually, that we first explored in our schoolwork, which we didn't show today, is the idea of universal design. And for this neighborhood in particular, which has such a diverse group of residents, different languages, different economic backgrounds, we felt it was important to try and have a sort of an iconography of different elements that repeated again and again and again: the front porch, the particular handrail, and the ramp as an idea of a way to unify these projects.
And you know, you could argue, and some have, that, you know, well, maybe it might not be appropriate either to have, you know, a ramp on every house in the Near West Side. And, you know, in some we situate it at the long side or at the rear, but we also didn't want it to look just like a ramp. And so there's an attempt here to try to integrate it and make it a landscape piece more than a kind of architectural piece, per se.
I think she began to ask the question that I wanted to ask, and that was just, and I guess it could be a question as much to home headquarters, and that is the relationship with the neighborhood, because it is, in fact, a very impoverished neighborhood. If you drive through there, there's a lot of empty homes, and it seems very poor. Although there is a vibrant, you know, there's an elementary school there, there's St. Lucy's Church, so there is a vibrant neighborhood. So I'm just wondering, you know, how you think about putting a house, I mean, how architects think about this, putting a $200,000 house, beautifully designed house, in a neighborhood where it so clearly will stick out like a sore thumb. And, you know, how does one,
I don't know.
How does one
I
work?
hope not. Yeah.
Not stick out, I mean,
Well, yeah. I mean, these aren't new houses. They're renovations, right? So
Right.
we were trying to pick up on some of, you know, we haven't really changed the footprints radically with the exception of the kind of dormer addition on the little shotgun. But, you know, you also drive around, and while it's culturally and socially at the moment feeling depressed, there's actually a lot of rich detail in some of the houses and structures that, with a little bit of attention, I think can kind of, you know, and attention and interpretation possibly can kind of come back. So I don't know if I'm answering your question.
And also in terms of affordability, these houses are not going to be sold at the cost that it took to construct.
Okay.
So that's...
And they're really for
It's
people to move into the neighborhood. I mean, they're not
Right,
for the
it's like a
people in the
jump start.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the idea is also really to promote the idea of a single family, that it's not going to be broken up into kind of an SRO situation, but that it's really about bringing people and family and kind of taking pride in these homes.
Just another follow-up question. I was wondering if you had collaborated with artists at all, because it's very interesting seeing it from an architect's point of view, because artists frequently go into neighborhoods like this in a very grassroots way and put up walls, and, I mean, and aren't following code, don't have architects,
Right.
don't have designers in place. So I was wondering if you had, in fact, talked to or collaborated with artists.
We personally didn't in our process. I know Home Headquarters has done a lot of active kind of community outreach, and there's kind of volunteer days where people in the neighborhood help on somebody else's house to kind of do some, whether it's architect drawn or whether it's just you know, maintenance, upkeep work. No, we didn't.
But it would certainly be something.
Yeah,
that
we'd be interested in, right?
Isn't the issue she's just touching on, anytime you start having an influx of artists and sort of more upscale thing, that sort of becomes, how do you integrate that in a way that works? And that's not really probably your issue. I came late, but you're the architecture firm, right? The local leaders who are organizing this structurally and so on, the whole footprint of how it evolves would seem to be, you know, the overarching question of how you do that in a way that works. I think that's a question mark.
And I don't, I mean, I'm not the one to answer this question. I don't know if there's anyone here from Home Headquarters who can, but I mean, I think it's not just artists. I think, you know, I think they're marketing it to a lot of different groups of people. There was earlier on in the semester, there was discussion about whether or not, Marilyn Higgins from the Near Westside Initiative, who, you know, knows many of the community members directly, you know, knew of a couple of nurses who were sisters or something who were interested in one of the properties. So in some way, that just knowing that there was this possible client infused some of the students' work and our ideas. There was also a moment when there's a writer center, right, that was writer workshop center that was kind of a university-based, I think, group that, or a city-based group, I don't remember, that was interested possibly in the brick house, and they were going to. So there was a moment in time where we were going to not renovate that for residents, but for more of a kind of sort of public building also. So there's some of that is, I think, Home Headquarters is trying to do.
Just to follow up a bit on the questions about energy, I imagine you probably don't have BTU numbers for any of these yet.
I don't.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Probably come to the crux of the applicability if boils down to, I think, affordability and energy use affordability, particularly the green roof. That might even be okay externally as creating new industry, as it were. They're doing that in the South Bronx. But the interior one, I'm just wondering if that would bring out any mold issues, which are a very serious concern in these parts. If you'd considered a trombe wall as a solar collector, so basically water-filled vessels that heat up with the sun. Passive.
Yeah, one of the students a little bit did look at it. We didn't explore it. It did come up as a question on, you know, a property at the Community Information Center. The client did request that because of the occupant load, they might sometimes get there for certain events. They did request mechanical systems there, air conditioning, cooling, and ventilation. So there it was being kind of handled because there was mechanical ventilation in addition to the living wall. And the residents, we're still kind of working out, you know, because number one, not everybody might not like plants, right? But also issues of just kind of operation.
One of the questions I had was about how you're going to, what the market is going to be, but more interesting, probably from an urbanistic point of view, seems to be a big investment in the Near Westside, and there are many other initiatives that are taking place. I'm just curious, is there a coordination between the different initiatives to infuse a new life and equality in the site?
I mean, not so specifically. Yeah. When Mark approached us, he definitely was asked us to really look at and engage the street in the houses, in the fronts of the houses, and also to really not mess with the kind of existing fabric that is there and to just try and reinforce it. So,
but in terms of any master plan or in terms
we haven't gotten a sense.
I mean, there seems to be a vision emerging for the Near Westside that to bring it out from a very deep state of dereliction and marginality. So there are, renovation of the warehouses, the universities investing. There are serious institutions coming from different sides. And I'm just wondering, is there any form of communication between the different institutions that are operating at the same time?
I mean, I think we've approached it from a focus point of view in the way that we were sort of brought in, right? And it's somewhat internal. It's, residential design to make a house occupiable, thermally tight, which they're not, and functioning. I mean, the Center of Excellence was involved, and Kevin Stack from Northeast Green Building Consulting, who also is on several boards and is a HERS rater and Tess Homes. He's on the board of the USGBC. So there's sort of the biggest connection, I think, or the only one that we sort of interacted with, to answer your question, was really this sort of towards pushing them to be sustainably designed projects with the idea that this neighborhood could be possibly it's a lead neighborhood development. The guy, John Manning from Earth Sensitive Solution, that came in and lectured to the students, generated a lot of excitement about there's so much opportunity to kind of link projects, at Laundromat, one of the small restaurants, a couple of these houses all on a geothermal loop for heating and cooling on a geothermal loop, and that the, Skiddy Park is there. You could bury the loops there. It doesn't interfere, with infrastructure of streets, and there you have this kind of community that's got all the right parts. And we started to draft a letter that we, like as a team, towards that end. But that was the most kind of interactive, I think, aspect in terms of the sustainability issue, not so much any of the other.
So I do think what you're touching upon
players.
is probably what needs to happen next if this is really going to get off the ground. I mean, the Near Westside initiative has the SALT plan, but that comes from them, not necessarily, I think, also from these other factors.
Lea.
So the intentions are all good from,
All
each
the
of the different players.
Hi. Interesting process. Since these four-sided, single-family, 1930s, thin wall, lots of windows, poorly constructed, cheap fuel era houses are probably the most difficult to make sustainable. If you're talking about marketing or anything else, it seems to me you want to get as close to being off the grid as possible with these old buildings. They're very difficult. The measurement between tearing them down and building new is another study, but let's say you renovate them. How close did you get to being off the grid? I mean, you know what I mean? Where
Like
truly,
complete, like zero.
yeah,
footprint
zero.
Yeah.
How close? I didn't say.
Yeah. I mean, like the shotgun house, we were proposing 2 arrays of evacuated solar tube collectors to do all the domestic hot water. I think that was covered, right? And on that particular house, that was manageable without a huge output of expense for those 2 panels, right? So I think.
Yeah, I was thinking of that as a process too, because if you operate as builders did, even during this time, economies of scale. For instance, if you had a dozen shotgun houses and you had 2 variations on the theme, and you could push that as close as being off the grid as possible, there's no doubt that your square foot prices are going to come down because of the economies of scale. There are 2 things that everybody knows that you do on these houses, and that's it. And that's the way that might work. So the trial of getting prices for one, it's unique, and everything is going to, the first time you do it, you're going to spend the most amount of money. Now the contractor, the second time, does better, third time, by the time he gets to the 12th, man, it's all profit.
Okay, thank you, Lea and Anne-Marie. Thank you very much. Now,